Hi everyone, welcome. You're watching Eagle News. I'm EJ Gonzalez in Washington. It's Saturday, March 26, 2022, here in the nation's capital. This week's stories. President Joe Biden says NATO would respond if Russia uses chemical weapons. At least one is dead as a tornado strikes New Orleans and the surrounding suburbs. Nevada State to save on prescription drug costs. California proposes a $400 rebate for its taxpayer to offset soaring fuel costs. Petrol prices in Australia reach record highs. The Panamanian government says despite increase, gas prices there are still the lowest in the region. Ontario introduces new measures protecting its international border crossings. On Correspondent-At-Large, ArtemisI Likeness has several things on his mind. The war in Ukraine, power outages caused by plastic pollution, and robots working in warehouses. On Oceania At-A-Glance, virtual platform designs are introduced in Papua New Guinea. On Mind Your Business, Netflix to charge subscribers for password sharing. On Learning Curve, NASA's Artemis One moon rocket is on a roll as it reaches the launch pad for the first time. On Color My World, an award-winning Dallas artist shares with Eagle News his remarkable story of beating the odds. On EBC Sports International, Fit DC, her story, 5K brings together the community for Women's History Month. Plus, runners in Los Angeles welcome spring with annual marathon. For this week's inspiring story about looking after each other, Filipino students in Ontario receive aid from the Iglesia Ni Cristo. And a treat for our eyes as we bring you the cherry blossoms in DC reaching their peak bloom. Our coverage begins now. US President Joe Biden has put Russian President Vladimir Putin on notice. As Eagle News correspondent Ken Cruz explains, Biden says there will be consequences if Putin's military uses biological weapons against Ukraine.
After warning that Russian President Vladimir Putin may use biological weapons in Ukraine, President Joe Biden at an emergency NATO summit declares the US will take action if there is a chemical attack.
We would respond. We would respond if he uses it. The nature of the response would depend on the nature of the use.
There's still no specifics on whether military force is on the table.
If chemical weapons were used in Ukraine, would that trigger a military response from NATO?
It would trigger a response in kind. Whether or not you're asking whether NATO would cross, we'd make that decision at the time.
The president says the summit with leaders of NATO, the G7, and the EU is sending an unmistakable message to Putin.
Putin was banking on NATO being split. My early conversation with him in December and early January was clear to me he didn't think we could sustain this cohesion. NATO has never been more united than it is today. Putin is getting exactly the opposite what he intended to have as a consequence of going into Ukraine.
President Biden and NATO again announced new penalties against Russia, including new ones on Russian lawmakers.
We're also announcing new sanctions of more than 400 individuals and entities in alignment with the European Union. More than 300 members of the Duma, oligarchs, and Russian defense companies that fuel the Russian war machine.
And $1 billion in humanitarian aid for Ukraine.
And today, I'm announcing the United States is prepared to commit more than $1 billion in humanitarian assistance to help get relief to millions of Ukrainians affected by the war in Ukraine.
But Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky, speaking via video in the summit, presses them to flood weapons into Ukraine. He says the West should provide all the weapons needed to prevent the deaths of Ukrainians from Russian strikes from Russian occupation. Zelensky says that Russia was using phosphorus bombs, which causes severe burns, conducting indiscriminate shelling of civilians, and could resort to full-scale use of chemical weapons. He was sharply critical to the US and NATO for not doing more, saying Ukrainians are dying, and says NATO has yet to show what it can do to save people, pleading for fighter jets, tanks, and a no-fly zone. Meanwhile, President Biden says he wants to see Russia thrown out of the G20 club of leading economic nations.
Yes, that depends on the G20. That was raised today, and I raised the possibility if that can't be done, if Indonesia and others do not agree, then we should, in my view, ask to have both Ukraine be able to attend the meetings.
He also says China, which, like much of Europe, still buys Russian oil and gas, so far has not given Russia more military aid.
China understands that its economic future is much more closely tied to the West than it is to Russia. And so I'm hopeful that he does not get engaged.
The US and its allies have unleashed significant sanctions against Russia for the invasion, but those penalties have not deterred Russian President Vladimir Putin. However, President Biden suggests that sanctions were not meant to deter the actions of Putin.
And I did not say that, in fact, the sanctions would deter him. Sanctions never deter. The maintenance of sanctions, the increasing the pain, and the demonstration why I asked for this NATO meeting today is to be sure that after a month we will sustain what we're doing, not just next month, the following month, but for the remainder of this entire year. That's what will stop him.
Russia's isolation on the world stage has been underscored by a second non-binding UN General Assembly resolution demanding an immediate halt to the war, which has been approved by 140 countries, with 38 abstaining and 5 voting against. Ken Cruz, Eagle News, Washington.
Thanks, Ken. Now, devastation in New Orleans as a tornado struck the Big Easy. Eagle News correspondent Myla Simbulan reports the twister left dozens of people homeless after it destroyed their homes.
According to local authorities, a large tornado has destroyed multiple homes and claimed at least one life as it ripped through the U.S. city of New Orleans and its suburbs. At 8:35 p.m. on Tuesday, the National Weather Service's local office tweeted a warning advising residents to take shelter. According to the sheriff of St. Bernard Parish, at least one person was killed in a Robbie, New Orleans suburb. At a press conference, Sheriff James Polman says there had been heavy damage to multiple structures. According to news outlet NOLA.com, the tornado also struck the city's 9th ward and knocked out power for thousands in southern Louisiana. Images circulating on local TV channels and online show homes torn apart, with lampposts, power lines, and debris strewn across the streets. Louisiana Governor John Bel Edwards says on a tweet that state agencies are assisting local officials as needed as they assess the damage and impact of these tornadoes. The tornado was produced by a line of storms working its way across the southern United States on Tuesday. Earlier in the day, neighboring state Texas has issued a severe weather disaster declaration after a series of tornadoes causing severe damage. Myla Simbulan, Eagle News.
Thank you, Myla. People in Nevada can look forward to paying less for medication. More on that story from Bureau Chief Anna Cui.
Nevada joins the Northwest Prescription Drug Consortium with the goal of reducing costs for prescription drugs. The program is operated by Oregon and Washington and will be of no cost to Nevada due to bills passed in the 2021 legislative session, including Senate Bill 380 and Senate Bill 396, which allow the state to work with other entities to purchase prescription drugs. Dr. Beth Slamowitz, Senior Policy Advisor on Pharmacy with the Nevada Department of Health and Human Services, says it's a great opportunity for the people of Nevada who face high costs for their vital prescription medications, according to the press release. This comes as prices for food, gas, and housing continue to rise in Nevada, so residents are looking forward to this opportunity to be able to save on their prescriptions. We spoke with Jackie, a local Las Vegas resident whose husband had to be hospitalized late last year and was started on Eliquis, a blood thinner used to prevent serious blood clots. According to Jackie, their copay is $387 for a 30-day supply. The Consortium may benefit Nevadans like John, who has a prescription drug plan but is on a medication with high copay. It may also allow consumers who are uninsured or underinsured to save up to 80% on generics and up to 20% on brand name drugs through the Array RX card. It's a discount card program which is said to be accepted by over 65,000 pharmacies nationwide. Consumers can choose to use it or their current prescription plan benefit, whichever gives them the lower price. According to the Array RX card website, there is no membership fee to join the program, no age or income restrictions, and all FDA-approved prescriptions are eligible for a discount. The program implementation is still in its beginning phase in Nevada, and according to the website, Nevada residents can start enrollment in the summer of 2022. Anna Kui, Eagle News, Las Vegas, Nevada.
Anna, thank you. Meanwhile, Californians coping with skyrocketing gasoline prices are hoping the state's lawmakers can come up with a plan to provide some relief from the sticker shock at the pumps. As Eagle News correspondent David Reggio reports, the state is considering a proposal that will put money into the pockets of state residents, whether they own a car or not.
If approved, relief would come in the form of a $400 check to every state resident who filed an income tax return. Right now, gasoline is averaging around nearly $6 a gallon, the highest in the nation. The price includes the state's gas tax of 53 cents a gallon, one of the highest in the country. The rebate proposal is based on the assumption the average California motorist pays about $400 a year in gasoline taxes. This proposal has no income limit, meaning everyone qualifies for a rebate. And married couples would get $800 since each files tax returns. This proposal has been countered by Democrats who are suggesting a $200 rebate with an income limit of $250,000. Negotiations between the legislature and the governor continue. Lawmakers still have to come up with a final number for the rebate. The money would come from the state's $9 billion budget surplus. They hope to provide some relief this spring. And for Californians, this relief can't come soon enough. David Reggio, Eagle News, Los Angeles.
Thanks, David. Now, down under. Australia is not immune to the skyrocketing fuel prices seen elsewhere in the world. Eagle News correspondent Patricia Madronio reports that Australian motorists are faced with prices at the pump they've never seen before.
Petrol prices in Australia have reached record highs, a direct effect of the war between Ukraine and Russia. As the United States restricts gas imports from Russia, the largest gas supplier in the world, it places pressure on the global economy, including the increase in prices of petrol worldwide. Australians brace for its long-term impacts as the war lingers on.
According to a recent estimate by the RAC, a motoring insurer, Australians face spending up to $1,000 extra on driving private vehicles if petrol prices remain at the current average of $2.10 per litre. This is on top of the inflation of food and medicine costs and other resources. Despite the country being triumphant in its efforts against the pandemic, earning one of the highest national vaccination rates globally, the reintroduction of traveling by flight will be negatively affected as prices of fuel cause airfares to skyrocket. Those living in rural areas with limited accessibility to public transport suffer the most. Anecdotal reports from citizens determined that traveling to work is becoming unsustainable, as it has cost up to a third of their pay. Already, many have to adjust by finding new ways to save on fuel, either by keeping their car garaged, looking for cheaper fuel providers, and even carpooling. Interest in electric and hybrid vehicles increases as more and more become frustrated with the volatility of the global oil price.
At this point, it may still be too soon to specify the long-term effects of the general increase in prices and the fall in the purchasing value of our money. Australians are appealing to the federal government to cut the fuel excise part of the federal budget in consideration of the pressures being faced by the people. On the other hand, others see this as a chance to explore life with reduced reliance on oil and petrol, potentially improving carbon emissions and moving towards more sustainable options for travel. Patricia Majonio, Oceania At-A-Glance, Eagle News.
Thanks, Patricia. Gasoline prices in Panama have taken another jump. The pump price for gasoline has gone up 11 cents a liter, averaging $1.17 a liter in Panama City and Colon. Diesel has gone up 16 cents, averaging $1.13 a liter. Prices in the rest of the country are slightly higher because of transportation costs. Fuel prices have been going up every 2 weeks because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The government has approved a temporary fuel subsidy for the public transport sector and the review of certain incentives to lower the cost of tires and motor oil, among others. The high fuel prices are leading in increases in the cost of food, transportation, and other commodities. The government insists fuel prices in Panama are among the lowest in Latin America. In other news, the Canadian province of Ontario wants to avoid a repeat of a February protest that shut down the busiest border crossing in Canada for a week by making such demonstrations illegal. Eagle News correspondent Yolanda Aspiris has that story.
This past Monday, the province of Ontario introduced new measures and legislations. The measures, if passed, are set to protect international border crossings from unlawful disruptions. The measures are being introduced after the events of the mass protests across the country. The protests were initially against vaccination mandates for truckers crossing the border for trade. However, the protest spiraled into larger anti-vaccination and anti-COVID legislations protests, with many outside of the trucking industry joining for their own agenda. In early February, protesters blocked cross-border traffic at the Ambassador Bridge in Windsor, the busiest international crossing in North America. Blockades were only broken down after Ontario declared a state of emergency to issue police. The protest blocked $390 million in daily trade. The Keeping Ontario Open for Business Act 2022 will allow the province to immediately provide police support and reinforcement against illegal blockage. This includes roadside suspension of licenses and permits, seize of license plates, and removal of objects in an illegal blockade. Over the course of March and April, Ontario continues to end COVID-19 mandates. As of now, cross-border truckers must be fully vaccinated or must follow pre-entry and arrival testing and quarantine for 8 days. However, on April 27, Ontario aims to remove all measures for COVID-19. Yolanda Aspiras, Eagle News, Toronto.
Thanks, Yolanda. This week, our correspondent-at-large, ArtemisI Likeness, comments on the Russian invasion of Ukraine entering its second month. Some other things on his mind: a resurgence of COVID, plastic pollution causing power outages, and robots that climb shelves in warehouses.
And now news and commentary from around the globe. The war in Ukraine enters its second month. Things not going well for Russian President Vladimir Putin after 4 weeks. Russian troops have made little progress in their invasion of Ukraine. Tactics are changing. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky saying the Russians are now using chemical weapons on civilians. Zelensky also asking Western leaders for more weapons so he can continue to defend his country. You know, no matter what the outcome, it's not going to end well for Putin and the Russian people. Russia has been economically isolated from the rest of the world. The latest measure, G7 leaders restricting Russia's use of gold. It will be a long time before foreign investors darken the door of the country's stock exchange again. The average person in Russia can expect to see a return to the standard of living of the old Soviet Union. Rationing of essentials, lack of foreign goods, empty store shelves, a dismal day-to-day existence. And this could last for 2 to 3 generations. Despite this, Putin holds rallies telling people Russia's special military operation, that's right, that's what he calls it, special military operation. He avoids terms such as invasion and war. Putin telling his adoring fans Russia's military goals in Ukraine will be accomplished. People there do not hear about the setbacks, the sagging morale among the soldiers, or the number of Russian soldiers killed. The Russian people, who are by and large cut off from outside media, have no idea what is really going on. COVID-19 now. What's happening with the pandemic these days? Where I live and in most parts of North America, life has pretty much returned to normal, and that has some public health experts worried. They say because of the latest variant, we told you about it last week, BA2. They say because of BA2, COVID is making a comeback. Dr. Rochelle Walensky, she's the director of the Center for Disease Control. She says there are early signs of a new wave.
CDC has been closely tracking the BA2 sublineage of the Omicron variant carefully. The variant has been in the United States for about the past 2 months, and it has been slowly increasing in proportion compared to BA1. This week, we estimate that BA2 represents about 35% of circulating variants nationally.
The U.S. Congress being asked to provide more than $22 billion in emergency funding, this so the country can plan for whatever comes next. Meanwhile, in Asia, parts of China remain under lockdown because of COVID outbreaks. To Africa now, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Plastic waste has knocked out electrical power in parts of that country. You can see the garbage here that's been thrown into Lake Kivu, which is behind the Ruzizi Dam, one of the largest hydroelectric power stations in the Congo. Bottles, cans, and other rubbish block the plant's turbines. Nearby towns go dark as a result. What's worse is one of the 4 generators in the plant has been damaged. That's reduced electrical output by more than 20%. What's happening here is another example of plastic pollution, which is plaguing the world's lakes, oceans, and lands. Do any of you work in a warehouse? Driving a forklift, filling orders? Well, jobs like that could soon disappear because of this invention. A French company, Exotech, has developed a shelf-climbing robot. It can grab goods that were formerly picked off by a forklift. This invention was prompted by the pandemic when labor was hard to come by. The company saying using robots means more orders can be filled faster. The gadgets can climb up to 12 meters to grab stuff off a shelf. And better yet, they never call in sick or need to take a vacation. Back in 7 days. In the meantime, I wish you all peace, joy, and happiness in the ensuing week. ArtemisI Likeness, Correspondent-At-Large, Eagle News.
Thanks, Thomas. In Papua New Guinea, efforts are underway to promote homegrown arts and culture. More on that from Eagle News correspondent Echo Hortaleza Quinola on Oceania at a Glance.
Today is the launching of Creative Hub Papua New Guinea. Let's all learn more about this project. Creative arts strand leader and pilot Philemon Yalimu initiates the online platform Creative Hub Papua New Guinea, empowering the creative arts industry. The project collaborates with the National Cultural Commission, or NCC, to introduce locally and internationally Papua New Guinea music, fashion, advertising, computer games, software development, and crafts.
As an artist myself, and with the interest of electronics and computer science, when I ventured into graphic design and into computer science, I realized, okay, well, I've got that advantage. How do I use that advantage to help my fellow artists and also patch that gap that used to be there? That prompted me to do a survey, an independent survey, which I did.
NCC Director Stephen Kilanda says this is indeed a step forward.
This Creative Hub is one of the important initiatives of the project that is undertaken by the University of Papua New Guinea and the National Cultural Commission. The art industry is one of the sleeping giants. That industry itself can develop the economy of this country as well. So we want to showcase to other countries that PNG is unique through arts and culture.
During the launch at the APEC House, Minister of Tourism, Arts and Culture Honorable E.C. Henry Leonard commits 20,000 kina to the Creative Hub project.
And definitely, it gives us a platform on which we can expose our natural talents in terms of paintings and even other artwork. ICT is the way forward for anything and everything in this world. Without ICT, you can't promote, you can't expose, and you can't go into whatever scale or whatever programs that you need to achieve. I believe it will be successful. From the onset of this program, I'm already making a commitment of 20,000 kina towards this project.
It is undeniable that these days technology is the primary source of communication, and with Creative Hub PNG, the avenue for sharing opportunities, job creations, export earnings, and inclusive social development is thus widened. Eko Hortaleza Quinola, Oceania At-A-Glance, Eagle News.
Thanks, Echo. It's time for Mind Your Business. So, you thought you'd be a nice person and share your Netflix account with friends and relatives? That's going to cost you more now. Netflix will start charging a fee to subscribers who share their accounts with people who don't live in their homes. Until now, the company has taken a relaxed approach to users sharing passwords with family or friends. But the streaming service's stock prices have dropped due to slower subscriber growth. Topped with competition from Disney Plus and the cost of producing original shows, Netflix says it has no choice but to charge more. In the upcoming weeks, Netflix will begin offering subscribers in Chile, Costa Rica, and Peru the options to add as many as 2 people to sub accounts at a monthly fee of $2 and $3. Netflix will allow people already sharing accounts to transfer profile and viewing history information to new sub accounts. The company will see how this scheme works out in the 3 countries before making changes anywhere else. On today's Learning Curve, NASA is getting closer to launching its first mission to the moon in more than 4 decades. With an update, here's Bureau Chief Philip Toledo.
We're now one small step, or rather one long roll, closer to the launch of the Artemis One space mission. Late last week, NASA's Space Launch System, or SLS, rocket and its Orion spacecraft rolled to its launch pad for a series of tests to prepare for the first moon mission in decades. NASA said the Artemis One will be an unmanned mission to the moon, but paved the way for future missions to bring the first woman and person of color to our nearest celestial neighbor. NASA Administrator Bill Nelson said, Artemis One will demonstrate NASA's commitment and capacity to extend humanity's presence on the moon and beyond. The 4-mile journey from the assembly building to launch pad took 10 hours and 28 minutes. The final test, called a wet dress rehearsal, will occur in the coming days. During this test, the launch team will load actual propellant into the tanks of the rocket and run through the launch sequence to test all the critical systems needed to launch this mega rocket. After the test, the rocket will be rolled back to the assembly building until about a week before the actual mission start, which the date is still to be determined. The equipment used in Artemis One and future missions will be NASA's foundation for deep space exploration. Philip Toledo, Learning Curve, Eagle News.
Thanks, Philip. We go to Texas now, where Eagle News correspondent Susan Husk brings us a story about the healing power of art. Here's Color My World.
We are here today at Hollerton Studio Gallery in Grapevine, Texas, where a local artist helps his body heal physically by creating art. Dallas native Merritt Maya never imagined he would become an award-winning artist until a major health issue during his childhood changed the course of his life forever.
When I was like 12, I had a spinal cord tumor in my neck, so they had to extract it, and it did a lot of nerve damage in the process. So I started kind of drawing mazes to help fine-tune some of my fine motor control. And I found that I enjoyed doing it, so I eventually ended up transitioning into painting because I thought it looked, nicer on canvas. I'm an abstract and non-objective artist. I primarily do a lot of line work, kind of maze-like paintings, but I have a couple of other styles, like a kind of stained glass or suprematism.
His physical condition led him to develop a unique form of art, particularly drawing patterns and straight lines using freehand, which gave him a way to channel his pain and help rehabilitate his hand movements.
When I used to have bouts of really intense nerve pain, it felt like my focus was razor sharp, and I could get these super tight lines and so densely packed on a piece of paper that it almost looked like it was half and half. So with a lot of practice, I've been able to kind of recreate that on my own. Largely because when I was a kid, Piet Mondrian was my favorite artist. And so my stuff is a little bit busier than his, but it was still a really big motivator for me. Refined, exact style is what I'm going for, because my hands are always shaking and sometimes they twitch. And keeping that under control while I'm painting is always kind of like the big challenge. And when I paint, it's not like I'm trying to paint a concept, or I'm not even trying to necessarily get across a certain message. It's largely me proving to myself that I can do it. And there are things I'm going for. I'm always sketching designs. A lot of it is freestyle, but you usually have to start somewhere. And I want to make something that's very aesthetically cool and pleasing. My style has kind of expanded and developed, and taking some art, like community college art classes, like at Dallas College, gave me new ideas and new directions, and I'm kind of hoping to take it further in the future.
We're here at Holderdain Gallery in Grapevine. I'm happy to introduce our artist, Merritt Maya. He is our youngest artist here, and we're so thrilled that he walked through the door the day that he did. And very unassuming, and I asked him if he was an artist, could I see his work, and he showed me a bit, and I was really impressed. And needed to get to know the person behind the brain that can produce what he does. Merritt paints freely, about a 1-inch brush, many of his maze-type paintings, and he just starts to paint. And for someone to be able to do that and so successfully, so uniquely, was something that we all embraced here at Holder Dane. All of the artists, once they met him, we just really enjoyed him. We all learned from each other and have embraced him as one of our family of artists here.
Because for a lot of work, I do a lot of the lines freehand. It only comes together at the end, like you have no idea how it's going to look until you see the final finished product. So even when I'm not especially satisfied with where something is going in a piece, I still try to finish it to the end because 1, if nothing else, it's practice, and 2, it could always end up being something that's gallery worthy.
In addition to creating works of art, Merritt Maya hopes his story can motivate others to overcome their own struggles and find healing and self-expression in the arts.
And I never expected to be an artist. Things just kind of turned out that way. And I love the fact that people enjoy my work. I get a lot of people who do the magic eye thing where they want to get really close and see images, find their way out. It's not really a maze like a lot of them, but people still try anyway. I mean, that's part of the fun. And for anybody who's interested in maybe trying their hand, you have absolutely nothing to lose by giving it a shot. You can find, I've used house paint and other pretty basic materials to produce works that, are in a gallery. Just try it. You might be surprised. It could be a little bit frustrating at times, but be amazed at what comes to you once you start actually just puttering around on a canvas. And even if you don't think you can do it, or you have shaky hands, or whatever, just give it a shot. You might find some way of expressing yourself that you didn't even know you had in you.
Susan has Color My World, Eagle News.
Thank you, Susan. Back here on this week's EBC Sports International, a 5K run drew a big crowd in downtown Washington, D.C. As Eagle News correspondent Jessica Bautista tells us, it was part of the district's celebration of Women's History Month.
Run with Women, Run for Women. Hundreds did at the recently concluded Her Story 5K in Washington, D.C. Friends, families, including fur babies, joined walkers and runners from the district and neighbor states in this year's Fit DC Her Story 5K, free runner walk in celebration of Women's History Month. In her speech, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser underscores the importance of coming together and empowering women. She says by doing so, the rest of the world is strengthened. Mayor Bowser herself walks 5 kilometers in solidarity with the women, men, children, and dogs from all 8 wards on the scenic route down Pennsylvania Avenue. Every walker, every runner joins the nation's capital in celebrating women's role in progress around the world. Crossing the finish line means not only finishing a race, but also making a statement that every step taken together draws the movement for women closer to its goal. Jessica Bautista, Eagle News, Washington, D.C.
Thanks, Jessica. In related news, Alan and Eva Basalyahe take us to the 2022 Los Angeles Marathon as this year's race winners share how special their victory is this time. Here's the story.
The 2021 Los Angeles Marathon was moved from March to November last year due to the pandemic. But for 2022, LA's big race has returned to its traditional March month.
Despite the quicker turnaround, defending men's champion John Career of Kenya succeeded in his goal to secure back-to-back LA Marathon victories.
I'm feeling very good
very excited. I'm very excited. It will be bigger than last year because I did my PR today. Today was a lot of windy and water, so we'll try our best. So I'll go and take 1 month for a break, and I'll start my training on April.
Creer beat his 2021 time by over 3 minutes, coming in at 2:09.08. And in the women's field, it was fellow Kenyan Delvine Merengor who took top honors with a time of 2:25.04. Aside from claiming victory in the women's division, Merengor also grabbed the $10,000 Quincy Cass Associates Marathon Challenge bonus by being the first runner to cross the finish line.
I prepare well from December up to now. You see, I was so fantastic today to be my time. Yeah, it is my day. Yeah, it is nice because even the weather it's almost like Kenya. Yeah, because I see it is not cold. For me to run in cold may be big problem. Yeah. They were so happy. Even in a lot of streets, they were cheering for me. Yeah, to be first challenge of a man. Yeah, it's a nice city, a lot of buildings. It's an amazing country.
In fourth place, top American finisher Tyler McCandless completed the marathon with a respectable time of 2:15.19.
I came here and executed on a big stage and a pretty big major marathon. I've been training really hard and have a decade of training under Coach Steve Jones. I was just really proud to come out and execute and run a really good race today. It's pretty special, and the crowds get pretty wild the last 10 miles or so, and I felt like it was happening over the last 10K, and that was a pretty special moment in those last 10 miles, 10K of running.
For some runners, participating in a marathon provides an opportunity to bring their experiences and philosophies along the race course and hopefully also share them with others at the finish line.
I was wrongfully convicted of 60 years to life. I spent more than 10 years in solitary confinement. I began studying the law in solitary confinement. I got myself out. Now I'm on my way. I'm applying to law school right now to continue to help others. I've been through so much worse, and I remind myself I don't have to run a marathon. I get to run a marathon. No matter what happens, I've already won.
So this guy here is doing his 300 marathons right now. And last year he's turning 70. 70 years.
Cara, não tem desculpa. Eu acho que correr é uma atividade muito democrática, fácil de praticar, não tem idade, né? Qualquer idade você pode participar. E é fácil, né? Vestir calção e tênis, você sai por aí para correr em qualquer lugar.
You know, there's no excuse, you know, do the first step. Running so democratic, you know, just need a shoe, sometimes not even shoe, and do it.
Having the city to ourselves was just so cool. Like all like-minded runners just taking over the entire streets. Like sometimes when it was downhill and I was just looking at the sea of runners, no cars, it was just so liberating. I loved it.
It was really cool. I tried to remind myself the whole time to just take it in. You know, running past the Hollywood sign, running past the Oscars, all that stuff was unbelievable. So it was a really cool way to see the city.
Running through the streets of LA, I feel like it's a nice little tour. You know, even if you live here, you get to see some things that you might not normally pay attention to when you're driving.
You know, it was really exciting to, especially mile 6, 7, 8, which was I live in Silver Lake, and we ran that stretch on Sunset Boulevard the past 3 months, like every day. And it was really cool to be able to run in the middle of the road.
Well, if you want to run a marathon, the first thing is you have to think you can run a marathon. If you ask most people, they'll go, no, I can't. Take it one step at a time. Your first marathon's going to be horrible, but you'll learn. My first marathon was like 6 hours. This one I just finished like 3:34. So, you know, you get better. You just keep practicing. Keep something to keep you motivated, and like get a group of friends that'll do it with you too.
I think training for a marathon is like a good metaphor for life. If you set such a big goal, it helps you achieve small goals on the way. And so break it up. Start small. You don't start by training 26. You build up into it. And you know, that can be an example for anything you're trying to achieve. Start small, see what you can do each day to achieve the end result.
Whether a basketball dribbler or a life-size teddy bear. The common message that every runner shared was that all are welcome.
Even if you're a T-Rex? Just trying to fit in.
Evan Allen, EBC Sports International, Los Angeles.
Thanks, Alan and Eva. In these tough economic times, people are struggling to provide for their families. Eagle News correspondent Ashley Sackmar tells us about Filipino students in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, receiving help from the Church of Christ.
Pursuing education is already a huge undertaking, but doing it while being far away from your family makes the road for any student even tougher. Add to that the financial challenges brought about by a global pandemic. It's during these challenging times when people find and form a new community to support each other. In Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, Canada, the Felix Y. Manalo Foundation, as they have done many times in the past, has generously supported this growing Filipino community of students. Sunday, March 20th, marked the first time the FYM Foundation reached Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, 700 kilometers or a 7-hour drive from the city of Toronto. Led by their ministers and workers, the FYM Foundation held a special program to meet the Filipino students living far away from their families. Vitamins, medications, and personal hygiene products were also included in the food packages given to the Filipino students studying at Sault College.
One of the Sault College Student Union services is the food bank, which is an essential services that we provide to make sure that our students are well fed and they are food secured. And today we are receiving a generous donation from Church of Christ, and it was really great to see human and people coming together in the community group, helping each other and helping our students.
The program was a wonderful opportunity to meet other Filipinos who are on the same page, studying and working very hard while being very far away from their family. A story so common to most Filipinos as they strive hard to give their family a good, stable future. Ashley Sackmar, Eagle News, Toronto.
Thanks, Ashley. We leave you today with some images of spring, the wonders of nature. Eagle News correspondent Estela Dominique takes us on a stroll through Washington, D.C., where cherry blossoms have bloomed.
Under a pink sky, a cherry blossom sky that is. These beautiful trees have hit their peak bloom this year, and thousands of spectators couldn't wait to take a snapshot of the wonder.
Here in DC, the National Cherry Blossom Festival has begun, evident with these exquisite blooms of the cherry blossom trees. These lovely pink wonders are a display of friendship between the United States and Japan. This year marks the 110th anniversary of Japan gifting the nation's capital thousands of cherry blossom trees. Surrounded with such a wonder, although they give out the tiniest hint of a scent, the mere sight of this lovely landscape amid the nation's capital already possesses a priceless fragrance of its own.
Hurry and schedule a quick trip to the tidal basin if you still want to catch a glimpse of this spring celebration. Estela Dominique, Eagle News, Washington, D.C.
I'm hoping to take my family to this year's cherry blossom celebration. Thanks, Estela Dominique. And thank you all for watching. View, like, share our other shows. City Limits with Alan Basalyahe. Connected with Dr. David. Take a seat and join us with Anna Cui. Plate Date with Mike Hudson and friends. Plus Journey, Stories of Filipinos in Canada with Kathleen Cruz. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter at Eagle News Live. I'm EJ Gonzalez. Happy weekend, everyone.